Live from Bryant-Denny Stadium with special guests, feature stories, and a comprehensive look at Alabama's upcoming game. This is Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
And good morning, everybody, and happy game day. Boy, doesn't that sound good. I'm Gary Harris, and you're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff, the A-Day edition. That's right, we're back, and so is A-Day after missing it last year. And let's go, as always, with our Bama headlines.
For the latest on the Crimson Tide, you don't need the newspaper. You need Bama headlines.
And you may have heard, but Alabama will not be full strength for this A-Day game. Nick Saban says that he expects to hold quite a few guys out of the game. On the plus side, it will give fans a great opportunity to see the young players, guys that haven't proven themselves that we've been hearing about. Now, Bryant-Denny Stadium will be at 50% capacity for the spring A-Day game. That's up 30% from last season when capacity during the regular season was limited to 20%. In addition to more fans, there is more game day features, more game day activities for the fans, like a new statue, Tuska the elephant, 7 tons, bronze, beautiful, hauled over from North River Yacht Club. Man, it is something else. And a post-game ceremony will celebrate the 2020 National Championship team. We're all looking forward to that. The traditional Walk of Fame ceremony at Denny Chimes took place right around 45 minutes ago. For the first time, Alabama honored 2 classes of captains. Last year's ceremony, of course, had to be postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this morning, permanent captains from the 2019 season, linebacker Anthony Jennings, safety Xavier McKinney, and quarterback Tua Tagovailoa joined the permanent captains from the 2020 season. Center Landon Dickerson, quarterback Mac Jones, and offensive lineman Alex Leatherwood. And A-Day is the 15th and final practice of the spring. And like we said, Alabama will be holding some players out of the game. It's unclear how many, but I'm thinking double digits, maybe 10, 12 players will not be in the game and they'll be missing. Nick Saban says his gauge for a successful spring game is to see the players play hard and execute the basics. Sophomore quarterback Bryce Young will lead the white team offense against linebacker Christian Harris and an experienced first-team defense, which is designated as Crimson. Other notable members of the white team include running back Brian Robinson, wide receiver Slade Bolden, and that side will be coached by offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien. For the other side, Jalen Milroe, could see some action. Also, of course, Paul Tyson is expected to lead that side as the quarterback. Ja'Cory Brooks and Christian Leary on offense will be guys to watch, and the Crimson will be coached by defensive coordinator Pete Golding.
No, I don't. I'm not going to talk about injuries. I'm not going to talk about status of players. I'm just not going to talk about it. I mean, if we're playing in the playoffs, I might tell you whether they were going to play or not, but I don't. If they play, it's going to be an opportunity for them to improve and get better. If they don't, it's going to be an opportunity for the guy that's behind them to play and get better. So either way, we win. So I don't think it's significant.
Like I said, we'll be interested to see those quarterbacks. Of course, Bryce Young and Paul Tyson. Not sure if Milroe is going to play. Hearing he might be one of those guys held out, but we will see. Here are a few Alabama players that you will definitely not see today. Wide receiver John Mechie III out with an injury. Defensive back Malachi Moore also out with an injury. And he had some off-season surgery. Defensive lineman Fedarian Mathis also injured for this one, along with offensive lineman Pierce Quick, running back Trey Sanders, offensive lineman Emil Ekiar, offensive lineman Evan Neal, and offensive lineman Javion Cohen. Plus, there could be some others, as we said. The wide receiver position was a big target for Alabama in this past 2021 signing class. Let's take a look at some of those guys that will be on the field today. You see them right there, Ja'Cory Brooks, Ijah Hall, Christian Leary, Cameron Latou, really going to watch him at tight end. He's made a lot of noise. How about some of those linemen? James Brockemeyer, J.C. Latham, Terrence Ferguson, Tommy Brockemeyer. These are guys that are anticipating playing well today, even though it'll be their first look at game action. Of course, obviously, guys like JaQuincy McKinstry, Kool-Aid, we'll keep an eye on him on the defense at that cornerback. Jalen Armour-Davis has been around for a long time, but he could be a starter this year at corner. Watch him in that secondary. And another one that could be in the mix, number 26, Marcus Banks. There will be a long way to go before Alabama opens September 4th against Miami and Atlanta, but a chance to watch these young players today in a game-like atmosphere should be fun. Well, the question on many fans' minds, which players will step up in place of guys from last year like Mike Jones, Devontae Smith, Dylan Moses, Landon Dickerson? It goes on, and it goes beyond filling the void on the field, too. Listen to what former Alabama running back Najee Harris said in an interview with ESPN's Adam Schefter.
I had a GM tell me that Mac was an elite. He had elite accuracy. He was an elite processor, and he was an elite leader.
Yeah.
True?
100% leader. 100%, man. 100% leader. I ain't gonna lie around this, but like there was not good leaders at Alabama. I ain't gonna flag.
Well, there's a new focal point outside of Bryant-Denny Stadium, and that is a 7-ton life-size elephant. We'll get to Tuska in a moment, but Nick Saban, of course, he's been watching this team closely all spring, and he is a guy that stays on top of it. It doesn't matter if it's spring ball. It doesn't matter if it's getting ready for the biggest game of the year. His approach is always the same. He is a hard-nosed, old-school football coach that has adapted his style to the new wave of college football. That's what great coaches do. Well, as I said, there's a new focal point outside of Bryant-Denny Stadium, a 7-ton life-size elephant Tuska. Look at that beautiful beast. I can call it that if it's 7 tons. It was transferred from its old location at the North River Yacht Club on Monday. It now sits atop a pedestal at the southeast corner of University Boulevard and Wallace Wade Avenue. And it is something to be seen for sure. Tuska is sure to get a lot of traffic this weekend with the 8A game and many fans having their first opportunity to come back to campus in quite some time. CTKO's Julia Westerman is live outside the stadium with some of those fans that are getting their first look at the 7-ton bronze Tuska statue. Julia?
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, there's quite a few people out here over by the Tuska statue, and like you said, it's every bit of those 7 tons. This thing is massive, and people are just really looking forward to getting back to a tradition that we've had every year, 8A, especially since we weren't able to have that last year. So I'm here with Allison Overstreet and Doug Johnson, and both of you, what do you think this statue adds to an area that's already so well decorated, like over on the Walk of Champions?
It fits right in. This is exactly where Tuska needed to be.
Tell me a little bit about you. You're over by the North River Yacht Club, so that whole move.
Tuska for 20 years at North River. So it's really been exciting for the kids, the grandchildren. They love to go see this massive elephant.
So do you think this really just like fits in right here? This is the right spot?
This is where Tuska needs to be.
What are you most excited for today with 8A being back and just getting back to this tradition?
Well, this is Alabama. The tradition that goes with it, Tuska is part of it now.
You used to live here, and you're back here for an 8A game now. So
we didn't come every year for 8A. When we lived here, we came to the games, but not usually for 8A. But really excited. My husband is having his birthday this weekend, and so these are really good friends of ours, and we were just like coming down just to have a birthday celebration and enjoy the game.
It's really great. Well, I hope you both have a great time at 8A today. Tuska is here for everyone to come check out, come in by and see this big elephant statue that we have added out here to Bryant-Denny Stadium. 8A should be a great time today. Other than that, right in here at Bryant-Denny. Reporting live for CTKO, I'm Julia Westerman.
Thank you, Julia. And I know I seem extremely pumped up about this statue because I am. I mean, it is incredible. And even though a lot of people got to see it at North River, now here at the stadium, so many more people will get to see it. It is an unbelievable sculpture, that is for sure. Thank you so much. Well, 8A is going to look a little different this year. Here are some things to look out for. Earlier this month, Alabama Director of Athletics Greg Burns said that the school would allow 50% capacity for the 8A game. That would be more than right at 50,000 fans if everybody shows up that will be allowed in the stadium. There will be no on-campus tailgating, though, for the 2021 8A game. General admission tickets, $5 this year. First time that Alabama's charged for a spring game that I can remember. And UA students will get into Bryant-Denny Stadium for free. The scrimmage is set to begin at noon, and it will air live on ESPN, which is noteworthy because very few spring games being showed on ESPN this year. But Alabama's is. That's because Alabama brings it. Well, what's the weather going to be like? That's a question we always want to ask, and the person to answer that question is WVUA 23's Jennifer Herbert. Jennifer?
Well, it's turning out to be a pretty good day to be outside for a game, that's for sure. It's not too hot, not too cold. You might need a light jacket, but temperature currently 65 here in Tuscaloosa, and the great news is most of that rain has moved out of the area. Currently looking at radar, just some cloud coverage around the area over Bryant-Denny Stadium, and as we look into kickoff and into the game, we'll see that cloud coverage continue. All the rain staying to our south, and that's going to remain the same throughout the day. So something to look forward to as we go into kickoff. 64 degrees will warm up at 3 p.m. to 67 before cooling off back down to 64 at 6 p.m. And for today, 67 degrees, mostly cloudy. Tomorrow will be at 70, mostly sunny, and I'll have your full forecast later tonight at 10.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. We'll look forward to that. And I know that Nick Saban isn't a guy that likes to throw around superlatives, but I bet you he would say this weather for football today is pretty good. Thank you for that forecast update. Well, coming up on Ctko, Alabama Gymnastics aims to get off to a fast start at the NCAA championships, and we'll let you know if they did. And Crimson Tide football looks to bring some of its young talented receivers up to speed. Plus, fans and media shouldn't be too quick to crown Bryce Young the next in line behind Mac Jones. Not yet, anyway. That's all coming up on Ctko. And one former Alabama football player looks to make up for his past mistakes, helping young players reach their goals. We'll explain when Ctko returns.
You're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
Well, during the 8A game, Alabama will honor the national championship team from this past season. Coach Saban, along with quarterback Mac Jones, will give a presentation after the 8A game, and the national championship flag will be raised in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Can't wait. The ceremony is scheduled to begin at midfield right around 2 p.m. after the game concludes. At halftime of the 8A game, Devontae Smith, who won the Heisman Trophy and Maxwell Award, will be recognized as well. It's going to be special. And welcome back to Ctko. I'm your host, Gary Harris. The battle for starting quarterback seems to have a front runner. After limited playing time as Mac Jones' backup last season with that all-ACC schedule, Bryce Young has gotten his reps in during spring practice. After the COVID-19 pandemic took last spring away, Bryce Young is using his first spring practice at UA to prove himself and to try to win the starting job and figure out Bill O'Brien's offensive system. The starting job is Young's to lose, and Paul Tyson and Jalen Milroe are also making significant strides trying to push Bryce for that starting job.
You know, he knows the playbook really, really well. I told him one of the things that he has to work on is, you know, having presence on the field, being the man, so to speak, taking charge, being in command. And I think that he's done better and better at that.
The other quarterbacks besides Young, as we said, are reportedly having different experiences this spring. Redshirt sophomore Paul Tyson has been around for a while, but he's dealing with a sore hamstring. At least that's what we're hearing, and that has kind of limited his play some, especially in last weekend's scrimmage. In that same scrimmage, the true freshman quarterback Jalen Milroe created some buzz among people that were in attendance with a long touchdown throw to Ty Jones-Bell. The play was called back because of a penalty, but it still left an impression on those that got to see it. Slade Bolden is a returning veteran wide receiver for Alabama football, and he's got a chance to be really, really good this year. Maybe be the next star for the Crimson Tide in the wide receiving corps. Just like always, Alabama has a lot of depth when it comes to the wide receiver position. This year's group is incredibly young, though, with only one veteran, Slade Bolden, practicing this spring. Of course, John Mechie will be back in the fall. With Mechie out, though, there are plenty of opportunities for Bolden to make a statement and for the young wide receivers to make serious improvement.
You know, it takes time. You know, it's a difficult offense, just like any other offensive program. I think everything's pretty much the same. Bill's a little different from Sarkisian, but you know, they both are great coaches, and I think we're going to be just fine.
Well, last year Alabama had 2 wide receivers selected in the NFL draft in the first round. Henry Ruggs was picked 12th overall by the Raiders. Judy picked 15th overall by the Broncos, Jerry Judy. And according to NFL Network draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah, Alabama will have 2 more receivers picked in the first round this year. In Jeremiah's latest mock draft, he has the Giants picking Devontae with the 11th pick and Jalen Waddle going to Arizona with the 16th pick. If that happens, it'll be the first time ever that a school has had back-to-back wide receiver first-round picks, 2 of them in back-to-back years. crazy. Former Alabama wide receiver Donnie Lee has a new training facility called The Lab, which is a mixture of training athletes for their particular sports and also helping them outside of their sports. Ctko's Matthew Travis is live in the newsroom with more on this. Matthew, tell us what you got.
Thanks, Gary. Donnie Lee is a former Alabama football walk-on who made some mistakes off the field. Lee is now back in Tuscaloosa as the founder of a new training facility where he hopes to train athletes, teach them the lessons he learned at UA, and also to teach them not to make the same mistakes that he did.
I've made mistakes in the past, made a lot of mistakes, and my ultimate goal with the lab is not only learn from those mistakes, but to teach from those mistakes. And I think this is going to be an amazing opportunity to do so.
The lab is a facility with a turf field, a basketball court, a lounge area with TVs and Xboxes where athletes can relax, and Lee has plans to continue adding to it. The grand opening was only this past Sunday, but Lee's been working with athletes for quite some time. One of those players is Georgia football signee Kamari Lassiter.
He's been the guy he's done everything that I'm trying to do before. So, I mean, he already knows how the college life is. He knows how, like, D1 football is. So, I mean, it just shows that he can translate that and show it to me so I can better myself in the future.
So I think we've seen a significant rise in crime in Tuscaloosa, right? I know that a lot of our players and athletes were affected very closely by this, very acutely. And so our goal with the lab, our ultimate goal is to create better athletes, of course, and to create a healthier constituency in Tuscaloosa, but most importantly, to lower the crime rate, right? We want to give kids a positive outlet so that they don't have to worry about, man, where am I going to go? Where am I going to spend this time, right? Boredom creates trouble, right? So this is our way of trying to circumnavigate that issue.
He is the founder of the lab. He says it doesn't belong to him. He calls himself a servant and says the lab belongs to every kid in Tuscaloosa and West Alabama who has ever had the dream of playing their sport at the next level. For more information on the lab, you can visit WVUA23.com. Live in the newsroom, I'm Matthew Travis.
Matthew, that's an awesome story. So glad that you could bring that to us and to see Donnie Lee turn it around and then help others. That's what it's all about. Well, still to come on Ctko. Tide pass rusher LeBron Ray is on his way to making opposing quarterbacks feel the heat once again. And Alabama finds a former Texan to replace the offensive coordinator it lost to UT. Find out more about Bill O'Brien's offensive process next. Well, after losing offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian to the Texas Longhorns, the Crimson Tide bringing in another Texan. Former Houston Texans NFL head coach Bill O'Brien. He spent 6+ years with Houston where he compiled a 52-48 record, won some division championships, 4 of them, in fact, AFC South titles, 4 playoff appearances, and 2 appearances in the AFC divisional round. So they have a good track record there. Welcome back to Ctko. I'm Gary Harris. One key storyline for Alabama this spring has been the addition of O'Brien as the new OC, replacing Sark. For more on O'Brien, WVUA 23 sports reporter William Galloway joins us live to go in depth on the new play caller. Bill O'Brien's got some big-time credentials, William.
Hey, Gary. Nick Saban brought in Bill O'Brien to be the offensive coordinator for Alabama this year. He's smart. He's one thing O'Brien and the Alabama offense, and he doesn't have to reinvent the wheel.
But the big thing I've tried to emphasize with the new coaches, you know, it's kind of human nature to want to come in and make an impact and do something that's great. We just need you to do a good job of coaching our players, getting them to play the best that they can play, getting the players to understand our system and what we do in a really positive way.
O'Brien can certainly do just that. He has nearly 20 years of coaching experience at both the college and professional levels. For Alabama, the names Saban and O'Brien will not only be a strength on the sidelines, but will also be a force in recruiting.
He told me stories about, when he was with the Texans at Penn State, about Brady. And, I just felt like, a guy who's been in the NFL and has coached the greatest quarterback of all time and has the greatest college coach of all time by his side, I felt like it was a good combination. I love Coach O'Brien, and, hopefully he'll be there when I'm there.
In terms of play calling, there will be adjustments, but that doesn't worry the players.
You know, it takes time. You know, it's a difficult offense, just like any other offensive program. I think everything's pretty much the same. Bill's a little different from Sarkisian, but you know, they both are great coaches, and I think we're going to be just fine.
All right, thank you, William, for that report. After he was hired, Coach Saban called O'Brien one of the brightest offensive minds in football. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think he's going to be a hit here with the Crimson Tide. Of course, you'll have great players to work with. Well, today is our first opportunity to see with our own eyes the A-Day game, since we didn't have one last year. So we're going to be looking forward to seeing all these new coaches as well, right? Like Bill O'Brien. All right, let's talk about some injuries. They've diminished the impact of defensive lineman LeBron Ray. The guy is so talented, but when you're hurt all the time, you know, it's hard to show it. He missed 6 games with an elbow injury, but that issue appears to be behind him. Ray says this spring he's at 100%. With 8 offensive starters leaving from this past season, the defense is more of a known commodity, and according to reports, is further along than the offense to this point. That may be because of players like Ray, who's feeling healthy and sounds like he's ready to take the next step.
It's definitely important for me. You know, I definitely took my time and, you know, had to deal with a lot of things. I think it's just now it's that time to, you know, take it to the next level and, you know, be a leader that I should be.
Well, Alabama outside linebacker Will Anderson, number 31, has been dubbed the Terminator by his coaches and teammates, even though he admits he's never seen the famous film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as a devastating cyborg. Still, during his true freshman season, Anderson devastated numerous opposing quarterbacks and running backs, and he says he's gained more experience, and as he got that experience, he became more comfortable wreaking havoc on the other side of the line of scrimmage.
I'm kind of ashamed because I never even watched the movie The Terminator. But I like the name. It's a good name. I guess when I looked it up and people were telling me what the meaning of it, I said, okay, it can stay.
Well, former Alabama running back and 2005 NFL MVP Shaun Alexander was in Tuscaloosa Thursday to present Will Anderson with the 2020 Shaun Alexander National Freshman of the Year Award. As a true freshman in 2020, Anderson started every game and totaled 52 tackles to go along with a forced fumble and a team-high 8 quarterback pressures. He also second in the SEC in sacks with 7. Coming up on Ctko, Alabama looks to be developing a dynamic 1-2 punch at the tight end position. We'll explain. And an in-depth look at the NCAA transfer portal as we try to separate fact from fiction. More Ctko, the A-Day edition, after this. Well, the middle of the spring isn't normally a time for a new coach to be added to the staff. But this year, well, last 13, 14 months haven't been normal, right? And the Tide added a new tight ends and special teams coordinator during spring drills. Drew Swoboda came in earlier this month from Memphis, and before that he was at Rice. He replaces Jay Graham, who resigned in February after less than 2 months in his role. Graham cited mental health issues revolving around the ongoing pandemic as his reasoning for stepping down. Graham left the coaching staff to seek professional help regarding the issues, but Drew Swoboda brings a nice track record here to the Crimson Tide. And welcome back to Ctko. I'm Gary Harris. One of the breakout players this spring is a pass catcher, but does not play wide receiver. Tight end Cameron Latou has been getting a lot of buzz. Being a redshirt junior that originally signed to Alabama to play defense, Latou has changed sides of the ball and has progressed as a pass catcher, having multiple touchdowns thrown to him by Bryce Young in the prior scrimmages. Look for Latou to have a big impact in this year's A-Day game.
Had a really good spring so far, shown a lot of maturity, made a lot of plays. Very athletic guy. He's a good C area blocker. He's got a much better command of the offense. I think he's much more confident. And he's really a good receiver. He's got good hands.
And spring is here, which means a lot of changes in the rosters and a lot of transfer news. Just this past week, the University of Alabama women's basketball team got an incoming transfer from Mississippi State to add to the roster. But how does that work? What is the NCAA transfer portal, and how is it set up? Our Ariel Schaefer has the scoop.
I think the transfer portal is for someone who's ready to go into like the professional league.
They move on to become pro, I guess.
I would not be able to tell them much. I don't really know much about it, but I would say, I mean,
It seems like it would be an easy process, but
Don't know much about it is right, but what the heck is the NCAA transfer portal? And is it really a form of free agency that allows student athletes to bounce around from campus to campus? As of October of 2018, the NCAA granted access to their transfer portal to all college coaches and college compliance administrators. According to the NCAA.com, the portal is designed as a compliance tool to systematically manage the transfer process from start to finish, add more transparency to the process among schools, and to also empower the student athletes to make known of the possible options to compete at different schools. Here's how it works. The athlete meets with their coach to discuss the intention of the transfer. The coach then submits the athlete information to the college administrator or the compliance department. The college administrator or compliance department must put all the athlete's information within the portal within 2 business days. From there, it's a waiting game. The athlete then waits to hear from other schools and is no longer allowed to compete in practice or games for their former school.
Once compliance puts a student athlete's name into the portal, it's just a waiting game. But what happens after that waiting game is over? I spoke to UA rowing Saskia Dammersmith on her experience with the transfer portal and her personal opinion on it.
I do think it's a very easy process. I didn't have to worry about anything. The school does everything for you. They put you in, and then you just have to wait for the emails to flood in, or you can email any coach. The only problem is getting to talk to your coach. If you don't have a good relationship with them, it could be kind of tough. If you say mid-season, I want to go in the portal, the coach that you currently are with can take away your scholarship.
The portal process worked for Sass, who transferred to Alabama from Minnesota. But who's to say that her experience is like the other student athletes who enter their names in the portal every year? Issues such as eligibility, scholarship amounts, and waiver problems come into play with most of these cases. With all these complications, it really does make you wonder if the portal is an actual free agency, but just at the college level. Reporting for Ctko, I'm Ariel Schaefer.
Thanks, Ariel. Very informative. Well, last night at the NCAA Gymnastics Championship semifinals in Fort Worth, Texas, Alabama came up a litlittle short, even with a great score. The Tide goes 197.575 to finish third in the second semifinal session and fifth at the 2021 NCAA Championships. The good news is the Tide has 2 NCAA individual championships. Luisa Blanco is the balance beam champ. You just saw her, and this is Lexi Graber. She's your 2021 NCAA floor exercise champion, national champions. Oklahoma and Utah advanced from that session, and they joined Florida and Michigan from the first session for today's final. Well, still to come on Ctko, we take a look around the SEC to see what the Tide's future opponents are up to this spring. Plus, we get to know new Tide running backs coach Robert Gillespie. Crimson Tide Kickoff is rolling on, and we'll be back with more right after this. Robert Gillespie is the new running backs coach for the Crimson Tide this year. He replaced Charlie Huff, who took the head coaching job at Marshall. Gillespie comes to Tuscaloosa from North Carolina, where he coached the running backs for the past 3 years. Before going to UNC, Gillespie got some SEC experience coaching the running backs at Tennessee. He's also produced 10 NFL running backs in his 17-year career. Sounds like a heck of a football coach. That's why Nick Saban hired him, I bet. Welcome back to Ctko. I'm Gary Harris. Gillespie certainly has some talented running backs to work with at Alabama. Trey Sanders and Keelan Robinson are just a couple that are hoping to return to the Tide this year, but Brian Robinson is also returning for that extra COVID season. Robinson had a great year last year, carrying the ball for 483 yards and 6 touchdowns. But you may be asking, why is he coming back with so much other talent already in that running back room? He says there are a lot of opportunities to improve on what he did last year.
Many opportunities for me, as far as, investing time into this year, to become a better player, on and off the field, to, obviously, have some improvements in my, draft grades and whatnot. So I just feel like, there are many opportunities for me to win this year, and, I'm all in for it.
And Keelan Robinson is returning after opting out last year due to COVID, and with his return, it adds a weapon catching passes out of the backfield. He is a special athlete. Well, earlier we heard Coach Saban say a number of players will be held out of A-Day. The running back position feels like One, though, that we're going to get a great idea what's going to be at that position and how it could look this fall. Behind Brian Robinson and Keelan Robinson, you've got Jace McClellan, Roydale Williams, others. Of course, Trey Sanders trying to come back from injury. That is a loaded, loaded position. Well, Alabama's A-Day is one of 7 spring games being played around the SEC, including the coaching debuts of Auburn's Brian Harson and Josh Heupel at Tennessee. For more spring headlines around the conference, here's CTKO's Crimson Jeffers.
The Georgia Bulldogs may have lost their star receiver George Pickens to an ACL injury earlier this spring, but Kirby Smart's offense is still full steam ahead. Quarterback JT Daniels is the first returning quarterback since Jake Fromm. Speaking of quarterbacks, you're only as good as your offensive line. Brian Harson has his work cut out for him after Bo Nix spent the majority of his sophomore season looking like a deer in the headlights.
Defense is going to get you. They're going to get you sometimes. They're going to put you. They're going to have the right call. They're going to cut somebody. We're going to cut somebody loose. There's going to be something the defense does that you as a quarterback now. What is your plan? What is your immediate reaction? What are you going to do? And sometimes you throw it away. And that's probably one of the hardest things. I tell the quarterback.
Another year, another Tennessee head coach. Josh Heupel is already facing off-field issues. 4 players, including star quarterback prospect Caden Salter, were all arrested earlier this spring for alleged misdemeanor drug possession. Also, linebacker Aaron Beasley is suspended because of animal abuse allegations to a kitten.
Like always, it's a tough year to be a volunteer, and some fans like 3rd grader Landon Israel are over the disappointment. The Tennessee native and lifelong Volunteers fan put himself in the self-proclaimed fan transfer portal. He wrote a letter to Lane Kiffin stating his fandom was up for grabs due to the allegations against Tennessee's football team, and he has become one of Ole Miss's most interesting recruits. That's what's happening around the SEC. I'm Crimson Jeffers.
Thank you, Crimson. That Lane Kiffin, he's a different bird, but man, he's fun and great to have him in the SEC as the head coach at Ole Miss. All right, let's talk some basketball. On Thursday, Tide guard Jaden Shackleford announced that he is going to enter the NBA draft to test the waters. He will not hire an agent. That gives him the opportunity to return to school if he so chooses. After an SEC championship and a historic run for the postseason for the Tide, you might think that Alabama would take a little bit of a break, but not this team. Alabama's ready to come out again next year and go even further, implementing more changes to make improvements. With a top 3 recruiting class, or at least top 5 for sure, and returning stars, there's optimism surrounding the men's basketball program. A lot of it. Optimism that starts with head coach Nate Oates.
There's injuries that happen. Certain guys outplay other guys. Guys are better than you thought. Guys are not as good as you thought. All that happens. So it's a good problem to have, being this deep, at least on paper. It also usually works itself out pretty well.
But you know what else? When you have success, you have a target on your back. That's going to be different for Alabama. They're going to be the hunted rather than the hunter next season. We'll see how they handle it. Coming up on CTKO, Alabama basketball looks to build on the momentum of their season, and we just talked about that, but we'll have much more as well. Alabama women's basketball. Star Jasmine Walker in the WNBA draft, and she went high. We'll tell you about it next. On Thursday night, Alabama's Jasmine Walker was selected 7th overall in the WNBA draft by the Los Angeles Sparks, one of the top franchises in the league. The 6'3" forward is the first Crimson Tide player to be drafted since '05, and being the 7th selection, she's the highest for a Tide player since 2000. Dominic Canty. Earlier this season, Walker set a single-game scoring record with 41 points in a win over Auburn, and she's the only player from the SEC to rank in the top 5 in points and rebounds. She is a great player, and this is a great shot in the arm, not just for her, but for Alabama women's basketball, which made the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1999. Well, we're about 15 minutes away from the start of 8A, so what will fans be able to see and take away from the Crimson Tide spring game? I'm joined now by Ryan Fowler, host of The Game on Tide 100.9 FM. He stirs it up every weekday afternoon, and he's outside Bryant-Denny Stadium with me. Ryan, good morning. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Gary. It's good to see you guys, and it's good to be on campus on the University of Alabama, and A-Day and all the atmosphere, the energy beginning to flow, and I feel a little normalcy out here taking another Alabama game in.
It really is exciting, Ryan. It's exciting, and we're glad to have fans back in 50% capacity. But from your standpoint, what are you looking for in this game? What are you most going to pay attention to, and what would you like to see?
Well, let's go to Bryce Young. We've heard a lot about what kind of spring he has been able to have. 14 practices so far. Bryce Young, and really if you study Nick Saban, I don't know if we've ever got this close to hearing a first-string quarterback coming out of spring. Normally, Nick Saban kind of keeps those quarterback competitions going as long as he possibly can. I think Bryce Young is making it hard not to declare him as the starting quarterback. So I want to see him take that next step. We'll see that offensive line replacing 3 out of the 5. The wide receivers, which guys are going to be able to step up? Who's the 1, 2, and 3? I think we know number 1. But then on the defensive side of the football, Will Anderson. We've heard a lot about Will Anderson. But my focus is going to be who's Christian Harris's running mate when you look at that linebacker group.
Ryan, you mentioned the defense, and you're right. Christian Harris there at the inside is going to be a star. Maybe it'll be Jalen Moody. Who knows? Maybe it'll be somebody that transfers in. There's so much leaving that offense. Even though the offense is going to be very talented, Ryan, it is going to be young this season. Is this the first time, do you think, in a while, maybe since 2016, that you think the defense may lead the way for Alabama football?
Well, I'm not sure it's possible in college football. And so that's what I look at it. I think this is going to be a great defensive unit. I think they've got a lot of weapons. But I think the way the game is played, it's just not going to be one of those that we give up, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 points a game. We're going to look at this and, maybe they give up 3 touchdowns. Maybe they give up, 18, 19 points. I think the defense will be the early part. But I think this game of college football, if you're not able to score points, you're not going to win football games and you're not going to win championships. I think the defense will be the strength early, but I think the offense will be there late November, early December when it really counts.
Ryan, final question. I want to ask you about Nick Saban. I know when he came here, I think Alabama fans were hoping maybe 6, 7, 8 years, win a championship or 2. I don't think there was any expectation that he would still be here in 2021. But now you look ahead and you see how fiery he is and how excited he is to be the head football coach at Alabama. He'll turn 70 this year. Ryan, how many more years do you think he can do this? I wouldn't be surprised if he goes another 5, 6, 7, 8 years. What's your opinion?
Well, I think you've got a good number there. I mean, go back to 2007 when he first arrived, and there was 90+ thousand inside that stadium that's behind me, inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. We were all questioning, okay, how many years would he stay in Tuscaloosa? And I think we're doing it again here as we go into his 15th season. I wouldn't be shocked that you're accurate there with 7 or 8 years. And I think the minimum is probably 4 to 5. And then you have to ask yourself, if he does that, how many national championships can he win in those 4 to 5s? And I think that minimum is probably 2 more left on the Nick Saban resume.
Yeah, Ryan, he's closing in on 300 wins. I think he's like 45 away. The fastest he wins, that might be 3 seasons. Great stuff as always, Ryan. Wow. We appreciate it. Catch Ryan weekday afternoons from 2 until 6 with the game on Tide 100.9 FM. Enjoy the game, Ryan.
Hey, thank you, Gary. Have a great day.
Thank you. Still to come on Ctko, we sit down with the director of the Paul Bryant Museum, Ken Gaddy, to talk about his retirement. We're going to miss him. Plus, the Crimson Tide softball and baseball teams have busy weekends. Stick around for a recap of last night's games when we come back. Another new coach for the Crimson Tide has NFL ties. Doug Marone, he's the new O-line coach. Marone comes to Alabama after 4+ seasons as the head coach of the NFL's Jacksonville Jaguars. He guided the Jags to the AFC Championship game following the 2017 season. After finishing with a 10-6 record, he also spent 2 years as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. What does it say about Alabama? You get former NFL head coach to be your O-line coach. Doesn't happen everywhere in college, I'll tell you that. Welcome back to Ctko. I'm your host, Gary Harris. 2 players with a wealth of experience. Running back Brian Robinson, he's been a contributor the past 4 years. And senior center Chris Owens is another. He's back for a 6th season. Earlier this spring, Owens spoke about the decision to come back, detailing his return to the Crimson Tide for 1 more year. The opportunity, of course, was provided by the NCAA, which, due to the COVID season, gave all players an extra year of eligibility, and Owens is taking advantage.
I feel like if I had went into the draft this year, I might not have gone where I wanted to. So knowing that Coach Saban was going to bring in some really reliable guys who have some good experience, I feel like it'd be just as good as going to the next level because I can still get that same tutoring and I can learn those same lessons before I ultimately make that decision.
Well, for the last 30 years, Ken Gaddy has been a fixture at the Paul Bryant Museum as the director here at the University of Alabama. And although he didn't predict this career path initially, Gaddy made the Bryant Museum his ultimate passion project. With more on the story, here's Ctko reporter Dylan Morgan.
Even as Ken Gaddy has decided to retire from the Bryant Museum, he still looks forward to the next chapter, which still involves Alabama football.
You know, I was working at the Natural History Museum here on campus, had a great job there. They asked me to be on a search committee for an assistant director here, and without thinking about it, I just said, no, I might apply. I ended up getting the job, and during my notice with the Natural History Museum, the director here decided that she would leave, so I kind of came in as acting director for day one. So just a little bit of luck, or actually a lot of luck in this case.
As Gaddy transitions into being a fan again, there are certainly things he looks forward to getting back to.
Usually by the time we get away from here, sometimes go to game is kind of midway toward the end of the first quarter. So see some of that stuff around the quad and some of the pregame activities, that'll be special.
And those close to Gaddy can attest to his love for Alabama football and look forward to seeing him in the stands again.
Ken's mild, got a great disposition, and if that's what he wants to do, I suspect he will enjoy it very much. And he'll certainly be ranked right at the top of the most knowledgeable fans in the stadium, I'll say that.
Gaddy certainly gained that knowledge over time as he envisioned a bright future for the museum.
Well, some of the goals early on, I really had to learn what to do here, but we tried to upgrade the exhibits. We tried to add technology. And that's really one of our goals going forward, even after I'm gone, how to use technology to tell the story better. We want to digitize a bunch of video. There's work in progress for an integration exhibit this fall, so there's lots and lots of work still to be done.
And Gaddy would love to see the Bryant Museum continue to reload and grow just like Alabama football. Reporting for Ctko, I'm Dylan Morgan.
Thanks, Dylan. A tough night for Alabama softball on Friday. The Tide lost to the Gators 2-0 and had a scary play. Claire Jenkins, who was coming off an ACL injury to her left knee, her right knee buckles on that ground ball. Prayers for Claire. It didn't look good. Again, Alabama loses 2-0. They'll play again at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And baseball lost a tough one to Auburn last night, 5-4. The Crimson Tide had won 8-7 in 10 innings on Thursday night, and last night fell behind but could not come back. It was a tough loss. So Alabama and Auburn will play today at 4 for the deciding game of the 3-game series. Again, Auburn wins last night 5-4 the final. Well, coming up on Ctko, an 8-day tradition continues this year when Alabama football team captains are memorialized in front of Denny Chimes. We'll have the story for you coming up. And we'll hear from former Tide football player Barrett Jones in our Faces of the Storm special. You don't want to miss this.
I think when that happened, I think it helped everybody from Coach Saban on down to really realize some perspective and to think about, football is really important, but there are things that are much more important. And so I think in some ways that perspective helped us play well that year.
Well, former Alabama center Barrett Jones was part of the 2011 national championship team. That was the year on April 27th that the tornado destroyed much of Tuscaloosa and our surrounding communities. In the days after the epic storm, Jones and his teammates traded training pads and football gloves for work gloves and just flat out worked to clean up the debris. His story is one of many that will feature in our hour-long special Faces of the Storm 10 years later. That will air on April 27th at 7 p.m. only on WVUA 23. And welcome back to Ctko. I'm Gary Harris. As we told you at the beginning of the program, today is a historic day. There were 2 classes of captains honored outside of Denny Chimes this morning. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, last year's ceremony had to be postponed. So this morning, permanent captains from the 2019 season, linebacker Anthony Jennings, safety Xavier McKinney, and quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, joined the permanent captains from the 2020 season. Center Landon Dickerson, quarterback Mac Jones, and offensive lineman Alex Leatherwood. Quite an event. We're only about 6 months out from Saturday's back in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and this time we're expecting, or at least hoping, that it'll be 100% attendance. The UA Athletics Tide Pride Ticket Office, in conjunction with the Student Government Association, announced that there will be a 2021 Alabama football ticket sales going on for returning students, with the anticipation of 100% capacity in Bryant-Denny Stadium for the upcoming season. If students are interested in requesting a ticket package, they must send a request between Monday, April 12th at 8 a.m. and Wednesday, April 14th. So you should have already gotten it done at rolltide.com. Full season ticket packages will be awarded after the request by UA earned credit hours as the conclusion of the 2020 fall semester. Student ticket packages will be priced at $20 per conference game and $15 per non-conference game. Let's check in with Jennifer on the weather.
Yeah, I'd say we're having some pretty ideal game day weather today. We're cool, we're cloudy, and we're dry. So what more could you ask for? We're currently sitting at 69 degrees here in Tuscaloosa. We've jumped up quite a bit in the last 40 minutes. So no rain at the moment. We have, it looks like, some scattered showers, light showers to our north, but nothing affecting us here at Bryant-Denny Stadium at the moment. As we look into the afternoon, we're going to continue to see this cloud coverage over us, but again, the rain stays to the south, and that's not going to be coming back into our area. So as far as kickoff is concerned, we'll be at 65 degrees, 67 at 3, and we'll cool off at 6 p.m. Back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Jennifer. Great forecast. Glad you could be with us. I want to thank everybody associated with the program, particularly our producer, Stu McCann. Join William Galloway tonight at 10 for a 8A recap. Have a great day. Enjoy the game.